financial engineering can actually play a role in dealing with this kind of a challenge. And the challenge is the fact that investors don't like risk, they do like return, and so why not give them what they want? If there's a way for us to change the odds of drug development, we will be able to bring more money into the space and get some of these breakthrough therapies into the clinic. So in particular, the example that I came up with years ago was instead of investing in one anti-cancer therapy, why not invest in 150 of them all at the same time? Now, that's going to take a lot of money. In particular, it'll take 200 million times 150 or $30 billion of capital. Where are we going to get $30 billion of capital? And as an economist, I have a very simple answer to that. The answer is, assume we have $30 billion. I'll come back to this in a minute. But if we had the $30 billion, look at what we can do. With $30 billion and 150 projects that are statistically independent and with a 5% probability of success, we're looking at a rate of return the same of 12%, but now the risk has gone down from 423.5% down to 35%. So what I've been able to do is to increase the Sharpe ratio dramatically, right? How many of you would invest in this proposition? Show of hands. I've got a lot more takers. I've just raised more money before your very eyes. Now, can we really do this? And the answer, of course, is it depends. Can we really construct 150 projects in a portfolio and reduce that risk? If the answer is yes, if we can really find 150 independent projects, each with a 5% probability of success, it turns out that not only can we do this, but we can actually finance this in a completely different way from how biotech is usually financed. We can actually issue debt, cancer bonds. How many bonds can we issue? Well, it depends. People don't like risk, so they're only willing to buy your bonds if those bonds don't have a very big possibility of default. So what is the default rate of 150 projects, each with a 5% probability of success? How many successes might you have in that portfolio? Well, we can actually do the calculation. It's very simple. The probability of at least 3 successes out of 150 tries, if each of them has a 5% probability of succeeding, and you've got 150 of them that are independent, it turns out that that probability is slightly over 98%. 98%. Think about that. You've got a portfolio that's got 150 drug candidates, and over a 10-year period, you've got a 98% chance of getting at least 3 hits. What does that mean in terms of the value of the portfolio? Well, we just said that 1 hit is worth $12.3 billion in year 10. 3 hits is worth 3 times $12.3 billion, or about $37 billion in year 10. If you have a portfolio that is worth $37 billion with 98% probability in year 10, that means you can issue 10-year bonds that mature and pay off in year 10. And if you issue up to $37 billion, your default rate is 1 minus 98%. What is the yield of bonds that have a roughly 2% default rate? Well, that's a single A-rated bond. And as of a couple of weeks ago, that was 3.18% yield, which means when you do the discounting that I can raise, of the $30 billion that I need, I can actually raise about $27 billion of that issuing cancer bonds. Now, if you take a look at interest rates for single A-rated debt, you can see why I'm really excited about this. Single A-rated debt has never been cheaper. It is at an almost all-time historic lows, which means that it's really easy to borrow this kind of money if you can demonstrate that the statistical assumptions are correct. Now, I'm going to talk about those assumptions and then come back to where we're going with all of these calculations. This is a probability curve that shows you the probability of getting at least K successes out of 150 tries, and that blue curve is where you have independent tries. And it's what I told you, 98.18%. of at least 3 successes out of those 150 tries. If now I assume that you don't have independence, but there's a 10% correlation between your successes, well, then it's only about an 89% probability you'll get at least 3 hits. If the correlation goes up to 40%, then you have a 55% chance of at least 3 hits. And finally, if the correlation is as high as 80%, you only have a 20% chance of at least 3 hits. With only a 20% chance of 3 hits, you have no hope of issuing bonds. Nobody is going to want to buy your bonds because now you're getting into that too risky territory. So whether we can do this depends critically on the characteristics of the portfolio. Those of you who've had introductory finance, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're looking at the correlations. If you can get statistically independent shots on goal, to use a hockey or soccer analogy, you can actually do some tremendous things with the financing. But if you're all crowding around the same shot, it's not going to work. And when I described this to one of my pharma colleagues, he said, you know, this is what I've been telling people in the industry for years now, but I use soccer as the analogy. And he told me that he coaches his 3rd grade daughter's soccer team. And he says, when you're coaching 3rd grade soccer, this is what it looks like. Kids all crowding around the ball. And it's a struggle to tell them, no, 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 go to where the ball will be. Don't just crowd around to where the ball is. When you compare 3rd grade soccer to World Cup soccer, you see a bit of a difference, right? And this is the challenge of portfolio construction in biomedical applications. It's trying to diversify and reduce that risk. If you can do that, you can get a ton of money. So, will this work? Well, economists would refer to the rest of these kind of pesky questions as details, details. Let somebody else figure out. But we've now come up with the brilliant idea of diversification, so go forth, therefore, and apply. All of you know that it's a lot more difficult than that. There are tons of challenges with these issues. Do we really need the 30 billion? What's the market failure? Why hasn't this been done before? Isn't pharma already doing this? Isn't pharma a big portfolio? Is there enough capacity? Isn't biomedicine too complex to manage like a portfolio of stocks? And on and on. Well, the short answer to these questions is I have no idea. I'm just a finance professor. But I started asking these questions a few years ago. And so I asked various people in the financial industry, and they said, well, we have no idea. We're finance people. We haven't dealt with biomedicine in exactly this way. And securitization, these techniques, have not yet been really deployed. Then I decided to ask the biomedical experts. They have no idea because their specialty is in either biotech or in clinical development. They're not really focused on these kinds of issues. And in the end, I realized that the longer answer is it requires a lot of effort to integrate all of these various different issues. So over the course of the last few years, I've collaborated with a number of people to explore whether or not this is possible. And it's become pretty clear that we need a course like this in order to get more students that have interests and backgrounds in both finance and biomedical expertise to collaborate. You can see this in the biopharma ecosystem. This is a picture that comes out of one of the industry publications, and it provides a really nice summary of the fact that drug development doesn't just involve one group. There are many different stakeholders that play a critical role in this. And so in order to make a difference, in order to impact the system, you really have to understand how all of these pieces fit together. What's interesting about the diagram, though, is that there are 2 pieces missing. And the 2 pieces that are missing are the money and the people, the intersection of Main Street with Wall Street. That's really what we're going to try to do in this course. We're going to try to bring the science and the business together. Because unlike many other industries, it is actually quite challenging to develop the expertise in either field if you're in one of them.